Hi there everyone, it's Neenah. Thanks so much for joining me today for a new project. This is another 10-minute card from my 10-minute card series. I love making these 10-minute cards because it's a great way to show you that you don't need to spend a ton of time to make a card project that looks really, really beautiful. Today's project uses contents from the Simon Says Stamp September 2021 card kit, which has 2 stamp sets, a ton of gorgeous paper, pattern papers, cardstocks, embellishments, so much more. And I wanted to share this project with you because I recently shared a no-line colored pencil project using this same kit. That project was a bit more involved, and this kit can be used in so many different ways besides the project that I shared. So in this particular video, I want to show you something that's a little bit more simpler, a bit easier to approach, and it doesn't take a ton of time. So why don't we jump in and start creating? I'm going to start first by showing you the stamp set that we'll be using today and also the cardstock colors that are in the kit. We're going to use all 4 of these while we're making our project. I'm going to start by cutting these down into 1/4-inch strips of paper. So I cut these cardstocks into 4 1/4 by 5 1/2-inch sheets, and then I'm cutting them down further into 1/4-inch strips. My plan is to create a pattern with these strips. And I'm not doing this as an exact 1/4-inch. I'm eyeballing it so it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to cut all 4 sheets of cardstock until I have a few of each color, and then we'll move on to adhering these pieces onto a scrap piece of cardstock. I'm going to use the new Simon Says Stamp glue stick to adhere these pieces of paper down. I chose the glue stick for adhering these pieces onto my cardstock because the glue stick will give me a little bit of wiggle room as I'm laying these pieces onto the paper. Because I want these to make sure that they're nice and straight across this paper, I wanted to have that wiggle room so that I can make sure they're perfectly aligned before committing to the final placement. So here I'm just eyeballing where they're lining up onto that scrap piece of cardstock, and then I'll give everything a really good press as I lay them down. Once you get the first strip adhered down and it's all lined up nice and straight, the rest of them fall into place. So what we're going to do is we're going to line them all up all the way down this particular square of cardstock, which is slightly smaller than a 4 1/4-inch square. And I'll just arrange these until the entire piece is covered. We're not going to use the entire sheet that I've designed here, but this will give us a lot of room in deciding exactly where the placement of our design will end up being. I'll press everything down really, really well to make sure everything's adhered nice and strong, and then I'll let this dry for a few minutes before stamping. And the reason I chose to let this dry is because this was a liquid glue, being a glue stick, and I'm going to be applying some heat onto this paper because we're going to do some embossing. If the glue is still wet while I'm heat setting this embossing powder that I'll place on top of our stamped image, it would actually start to warp the paper. So I want to make sure that it's completely dry and everything's adhered well. So I stamped this flower design from the Sunshine Flowers stamp set that's in the kit, and I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle it with some clear embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp. I actually have this embossing powder in a little container, and a spoon is a great source to be able to use to pick it up out of the container and onto my project. I don't do this for all of my embossing powders, but for certain ones that I use a lot, I do like to do that. So here's where I'm going to go ahead and heat set that embossing powder, and because the glue is nice and dry, we didn't have any warping or anything, and that's not going to damage our beautiful design. I'm trying to decide which circle that I'm going to be die cutting a piece of white cardstock from. This piece of white cardstock is going to get layered over top of our pattern, and it's going to be slightly smaller than a 4 1/4-inch square. So I've die cut my circle into my white cardstock, and I'm going to trim this down so it's a nice square, and this will get layered over top of our florals. So the florals are going to be peeking out from behind this circle, and this will all get matted onto a 4 1/2-inch card base. So it's a square card base at 4 1/2 inches on each side. Here I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of that circle panel and layer it right on top of our design that has the beautiful flowers, clear embossed, onto our colored background that we created with the cardstocks. Finally, I'm going to adhere this entire piece onto my card base using some Simon Says Stamp dot runner. I'll cover this nice and generously with all that adhesive and then layer this right into the center of my card base. So the card assembly is pretty much done. The only thing left is to add a sentiment and some embellishments. So I'm going to bring out the same stamp set that I got the florals from, which is the Sunshine Flowers set, and I'm going to stamp those sentiment Miss You onto black cardstock. Now the black cardstock isn't in the kit, but I did want that nice contrast off of all the colors, so I pulled that out of my stash. I'm going to white emboss this with some embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp. After I've heat set that, I can trim this down into a little bit of a sentiment label. So I'm just going to leave a nice little edge of margin around the sentiment, and then I'll trim up the sides so it has the same size of margin following around the sentiment. This sentiment is going to get popped up off of my card using foam tape. I put 2 layers of foam tape behind the sentiment because I do have 1 layer of foam tape underneath that circle. So I wanted just a little bit of extra lift on the sentiment, and that's why I chose to add that extra oomph with that foam tape. And then finally, I pulled out some sequins from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to glue these down onto my card using some glossy accents. The sequins aren't in the kit, however, they are a perfect match for the colors that are included in the Sunshine Flowers September kit from Simon Says Stamp. So if you do want to add those sequins to your cart when you purchase the kit, I have the link to those particular mix down in the video description below or over on my blog. I hope that today's 10-minute card has been inspiring to you and is providing you some ideas for how you can use this beautiful kit to create a really stunning card in just a short amount of time. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. I also have the video that I showcased using the September kit previously by creating that no-line colored pencil coloring technique. I have that linked here at the end of this video as well, or down below in the video description if you want to check that out. Thanks again for tuning in. I will be back soon with more to share with you all. But until next time, I hope everyone has a very wonderful day. Bye!